within the last several months, Philo has announced some kind of key changes to the product line. I'm Daniel Frankel, co-founder and CEO of Next TMT. And we're here today with our Next TMT Talk segment for our midweek issue, produced in cooperation with our great partners at Media Play News. And I'm here with Addy. He's the Chief Marketing Officer, among other roles at streaming service Philo. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Daniel?
Good. Fabulous spring weather here in Los Angeles, Europe, and San Francisco, I believe.
I am indeed. We had some rain this weekend, but the sun has come out.
Yeah, I have a son up in Berkeley, so I get regular weather reports, but that's not why we're here. A lot going on with Philo, the low-cost alternative among virtual pay TV services, but that's not how you market it. Some recent shifts in terms of the product line. You guys are moving around SVODs and fast channels in addition to the linear cable channels you've always marketed. And on top of that, some sort of key changes in the executive ranks. I know you have a new CEO and some other people have been hired. Let's start with that. What's going on there?
So Mike Kaiserling, who was formerly the COO, took on the mantle of CEO, and Andrew McCollum, who was the former CEO, is now executive chairman on the board. That was a pretty natural transition. Mike has been here a little longer than I've been here, and I was here prior to launching the national service, has been running the business side of the company for most of that time. And so at this point, it was sort of a natural passing of the torch to Mike as we move into this next phase of the business. And so we're just gearing up for that.
We interviewed Mike in this space about 6 months ago. Seemed like a real screamer, real volatile guy. A lot of staplers being thrown around the office.
No, Mike is known for his jokes, and so there's never an all hands or anything where you're not going to get some Mike Kaiserling patented quips. And we have a phenomenon here called Joke of the Week, which is certainly sponsored by it.
Yeah, blue stuff or pretty tame for the office environment.
Pretty tame. The HR is on there too, so you got to keep it coached.
Yeah, for sure. So that's out of the way. Within the last several months, Philo has announced some kind of key changes to the product line. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so for a lot of the recent past, we have been a single product company, and we had evolved to we have, as you mentioned, lifestyle focused entertainment channels that are linear in nature and what we call kind of the best of lifestyle and entertainment, no broadcast. But as the market has fragmented and there's all kinds of products from SVOD to free to linear, our attempt and our thesis has always been to create a unified experience where people could get all of these things under one roof, one consistent experience, reliable and innovative. And we had launched a paired bundle with SVOD and the linear that included HBO Max, AMC Plus, and Discovery Plus to the package. And quickly thereafter realized that while that expanded our addressable audience, we had an opportunity to continue to nurture the value-seeking audience that wasn't necessarily interested in some of the more premium tier offerings. And so we bifurcated the package so that now we have the two. There's the essential package, which is the entry-level package, which is basically what we've been offering for most of our existence, that lifestyle linear channels. And then you can opt for separately this Bundle Plus package that includes those SVODs. So they're choose your own adventure to some extent, a little bit of a different audience going to each, but one is a path to the other and vice versa in the way that we think about things.
So it's a little bit of an eclectic package. It always has been. And you guys have been very lauded across entertainment verticals for the way you've contained cost. I think YouTube TV famously started out at $35 a month and is more than twice that now. And I always wondered how you went about designing the channel bundle. And it's not haphazard. I was in a Reddit forum not too long ago, and I saw your former CEO, Andrew McCollum, chiming up and talking to customers. It seems like you guys are engaged. There's a boutique feel to the engagement with the users and how you got programmed this. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So when Philo launched, the intent was always to disrupt, the cable TV behemoth. And so when we started, some companies, as you mentioned, YouTube TV and others, they went for the full cable replacement. It's everything you're getting with cable, just through streaming, perhaps some bells and whistles that are made possible by the internet. we took a different path. We were aware of Philo started as a college product, and that's essentially the R&D portion of what we were doing. And we knew at that time that generally there are a lot of channels that people watch that they love to leave on that are not the broadcast and the expensive sports that drives up the cost of the programming and the package, and that there was an opportunity to serve people with only the things that they want to watch. You don't pay $100 or $200 for the option to watch everything when you're only watching 10 or 20% of that. Let's carve out that 10 or 20% where that's most of what you're watching and cater to what was a smaller piece of the pie, but an underserved niche. And that's kind of, we bet on that and doubled down on that one part of the market. And so over time, that thesis has been validated. We've been able to grow. There's been other entrants coming into this part of the market as well. But it was always with the ultimate goal of saying, as we grow, we don't want to ever grow into one size fits all. We want to be able to add optionality so that you can add the pieces that you want, whether it's add-on or if you were not in the mood for or in the budget for a paid subscription right now, that you could experience a free service. So it was always really doubling down on the audience, and we were able to see the behaviors, what's the overlap between different content that we have. And so we optimized the evolution of our content package based on where those concentric circles crossed one another. And so we did well in Black entertainment. So we added channels that were relevant there. We do very well with reality generally of all sorts, whether it's DIY or other shows. So building toward that has been very helpful. Legacy classic sitcoms do very well for us. So building for that audience. So really starting with the core audience and building outward versus trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm the typical American meathead that, I need my NBA playoffs. I need, but there's a different type of mindset among consumers. If there's a prototype demographic, and maybe there isn't one for the Philo user, would that be like a recent college graduate, female, living in an apartment? But who is that?
Yeah, we tend not to think of it in traditional demographic terms because those have been blurred because interests kind of cross generations and other characteristics. I will say generally it's older than so 30s, 40s, 50s is where our sweet spot is. Found that kids coming out of college, for example, don't tend to sign up for subscriptions themselves. They're still relying on their parents or whomever, password sharing and the like. And so we understand that because we don't have broadcast and sports, we do skew about 60+% female. So that is another kind of demographic line that you will see represented in the data. But beyond that, I think that's where it starts to break down in terms of geographic representation and interest representation and kind of cross the lines. And so we really focus on what cohorts of entertainment are people watching and how do those complement each other. I shared a few. True crime is another area that we see a lot of traction on and see very engaged users. And the people who are using Philo, they're watching 4 or 5 hours a day. And so this is their main TV service. And then they complement it with other things. And to your point about being a sports meathead, our vision was that one day the sports was going to fall out of the bundle, which we are starting to see now with ESPN coming out, and each of the leagues has their own package. So one of our ambitions in the future is, well, what if you can add those on when your sport is in season? Isn't that better than paying for a $200 package all year?
So let's back up a little bit and talk about you. I looked at your background a little bit, and you've done a few things besides marketing. Had kind of a high-level finance job here in Los Angeles at one point. So talk about your role a little bit at Philo. It seems a little bit more diversified than just marketing the product.
Sure. I'd say I'm a recovering finance person.
My son's training to be a finance bro. I don't know how I feel about it. So go ahead.
It's very useful today, and it informs a lot about what type of marketer I am and the type of value I try to add to the Philo business. But I was an economics major in college, and so that's some of my friends went to a public finance firm after school, and banking was kind of the it thing. You can make good money, and it was a great learning experience in terms of just thinking in terms of spreadsheets and value and optimization and all of that. And living in LA, as I'm sure you know, I had passions outside of my day job that were more tied to entertainment and music. And I was managing bands and playing in them. And really that's where I started learning marketing. And so after you get to a certain level in, professional services, it becomes, you get to the VP ranks, it's something a sales job. And that wasn't where my passion was. And I was trying to think, well, how do I tie this business acumen that I have with this passion I have for entertainment? And that's when I did a career pivot, went back to school in New York, worked at NBC for a little bit, did a practical MBA, I call it, at Deloitte following that, where I was doing marketing strategy, mostly for media, tech, and entertainment companies. And then my first operation head of marketing job was with Comcast, where we were building an early, what is now called fast service called Watchable there as it was being incubated in the larger Comcast environment. And that was a great experience because I feel like it was a part of this first wave of both what is now known as performance marketing, but also this first wave of streaming on a global scale and what that could mean and look like. And so we built that business within Comcast. And from there, I came to Philo. One of the things with Comcast, they have since they absorbed Watchable into the company and then later bought Zumo. They have the ability to just accelerate those things through M&A. But Philo's sole mission was just to innovate TV, and that's why I came here. And since I have been here, I've been using all of those past skills as fluency and a way to drive influence across the organization. And one of the great things about startups is when I started, there were only 35 people here. And you can influence and help add value wherever the company needs it. So I had hands in strategy, working very closely with the content teams and the engineering and product teams and data teams to make sure that the experience and the product that we were delivering was truly on par beyond anything else in the market, even though it was a value, like where we're positioned as a business is more in the value segment, to have like an innovative product. And so I've continued to do that over time while I've been here.
It's interesting you came from Comcast because it seems like their merchandising strategy for streaming philosophically is somewhat similar to Philo. They're trying to kind of stay out of that expensive live sports milieu, and it's part of their business, but it exists elsewhere. The core product. You've been there long enough, or been in this gambit long enough to see some significant changes in how go-to-market strategies are executed and designed. Maybe talk about that a little bit. I mean, I think you started doing this at Philo at 2017. So it seems like the market changed and the game has changed. Maybe talk about that evolution.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to even remember what was happening back then, but there were far fewer players in the market. Netflix was the main disruptive streamer next to cable TV. And since then, there are companies who have stopped offering video altogether. A lot of the internet providers regionally and have been partnering with different companies. Some of even the partners that we offer, that linear on the platform, have launched their own streamers since we launched. And so that has made the environment far more competitive. And so that means really understanding who your audience is and knowing where to get them. And it's also confusing a little bit for the audience because a show can be in 9 different places at 9 different price points. And it's hard to figure out whether you're getting new seasons or old seasons or first window or second window. And so that's some of what we're trying to solve with this unified experience idea that I brought up, is to just simplify all of that. Right now, I think we're in a time, as we were mentioning before, where the bundle is continuing to break. And then we're moving back into consolidation. You have the Paramount and Warner Brothers move that just happened. You had Disney buying uh, Fubo and using that, in terms of how they're going to go to market with live TV. It has left Philo as the last independent streamer at scale in the market, which is an opportunity for us, but also as we are starting to think about how do we go up market and take advantage of the moment right now. But to me, again, to double down, it really is trying to provide the most value in one single place and a common experience. That's what we hear from our audiences time and time again. And from a go-to-market perspective, really just leaning into all the places where people spend their time. So, and I think that also has fragmented. You have much more people who are either on social media, but some of those people may not. They may be in their car all the time. So you have to find them there, and really understanding the different places that you can get in front of people. The last thing I'll say on this is the advertising piece, which has been very interesting to see how that has evolved over time. In the beginning, Netflix, no ads. Against ads, said they would never have ads, right? And so you had this dichotomy of, well, that's cable. Cable has ads. That's something I don't want. These new SVODs are cool. And so, you don't have to watch ads. You just pay a little bit more money. Obviously, over time, the businesses realize a dual revenue model is attractive. And what we see in our business is that there's actually tolerance for ads, especially in this linear format where people are more used to it. And so now that all businesses are moving to having both ad supported and ad free options, we are now back in the spotlight in terms of our business model, which we never really strayed from. So I think that has also been an interesting impact
I
on the
want to
business.
get to that component because it is vital. But talking about subscriber growth and distribution, for a while, it looked like those relationships with tier 2 and tier 3 telecoms becoming their video business basically would seem like the primary growth driver. How did it end up for you? Is that mature now? Are you all the places where you can be, or what's the state of that market?
Yeah, so a lot of where we do our distribution besides direct is on the connected TV platforms. That is represents the lion's share, the Roku's and Fire TVs of the world. The one places that are still on our list are the gaming consoles that we have not quite expanded to, but that would probably round out a full cadre of services. But we're pretty well covered from that perspective, and we've done partnerships over time with ISPs and internet providers and those sorts of platforms, which can help, but they don't. We found that we have a better ability to drive volume ourselves, frankly, and so that's where we lean in the most.
It seems like, and this is a broad general question, it seems like for subscription video services of all kinds, fiber growth right now is hard to come by. It was explosive for a while for everybody. And then I don't know if it's saturation. People are like, they know what they like now and then settle into patterns. What are you, like I said, I don't want to get too sensitive with it, but what are you seeing from that perspective?
I think it's really two things. One, you touched on is that there are so many options out there now that it is more difficult to capture bigger parts of the pie. And that's why I think you're seeing the consolidation that you're seeing happen in the industry right now. And so there is, subscription fatigue is a thing, but it's also just that people tend to find where they're comfortable and then they'll stick there unless you can raise the profile or there's a show somewhere that they can get. And so that's why we lean heavily on this value for the people who are interested in what we want. The second thing is really the behavior profile of consumers has changed significantly. I think we have crossed the threshold where companies in this space are fighting churn, right? At the beginning, it was like, well, how do you stop this churn and return behavior? That is just the new normal, where people have gotten very savvy about joining subscription services exactly during the time when the content they want is on there. And the second that it's gone, they leave and go to the next one. And so we have, as an industry, have trained them to seek those out and find those opportunities. Again, another reason why we're leading into this unified experience. Looking at our data, we have literally seen that behavior become more sharp. So I'd say we have two fundamental types of users. We have those that are all season Philo watchers. There's always something that they like on. They're very deep and deeply engaged with a wide smattering of what we offer. The other group are more seasonal watchers. So they come in for a show or a bucket of shows and they watch those things. And then after they're gone, they downgrade into a free version or something else. We have seen that behavior narrow where before they would come a little bit before their show. And then after their show was over, they'd stick around for a while, watch a few other things, and then they might phase out over time. That kind of bell has narrowed pretty consistently year on year. So it's very interesting to see in the data, these people are being trained about how they go from service to service, which is, again, makes it hard to grow aggregate scale when people are coming and leaving so often. And so that's why we've tried to design our business to accommodate the behavior versus to fight it.
You hear the buzzword like it's a magic bullet. Bundling fights churn. What's your opinion on it?
It's true. It's the truth. So the question is not, do you bundle? It is, what do you bundle and how do you bundle? And it's no accident that the cable companies of old, the Comcasts or DirecTVs or whomever, had very nice cash flow businesses for so long because they had these large bundles. Competition made that more challenging to do. But in the end, we have even seen with our launch of the Bundle Plus that we've seen retention for those cohorts improve considerably. And it makes sense. If you can get more value for your money without paying, that incremental cost, it's more likely to stick around. And bundles can be within content, bundles can be cross services, so it can be content, internet, the ways that folks play. But I think it's just really it's a fact. And so we're just for Philo figuring out how the best way we can bundle the services that people enjoy and paying specific attention to our audience because the bundle that works for other people may not be what our audience particularly is interested in.
Sensitive question alert. I know you guys disclosed the subscriber number in February of 2024. And like a lot of folks in the streaming business haven't been real loquacious about that number since. Have you released anything lately, or are you keeping that under wraps?
Yeah, we haven't released numbers lately. We tend to accompany specific numbers releases with strategic efforts that we're trying to do. We're also changing a little bit how we think about it as we've launched new business models to the business. So, early in the early days, it was just subscription. Now we have a free service, we have a transactional service, and all of these things are part of us growing the business. And so we're abstracting a little bit away from specific subscriber numbers because a big part of our business is advertising, and that's more about how many eyeballs are we reaching in general. So as we look forward for the business, we're just looking at a more diversified array of metrics in terms of how we assess the growth of the business and the profitability. So that has to do with subscribers, has to do with our overall eyeballs in terms of the millions of people that we reach, and then obviously the monetization and how what array of services people are taking advantage of on the platform and their engagement.
I wanted to ask, among a number of volatile things that are hard to control, is the way content suppliers package their goods. I know Charter Communications made a big commanded a lot of attention a few years ago by demanding SVODs be packaged with linear channels, because their argument was that linear channels are being diluted by streaming. This obviously impacts you, and you have bundled some SVODs in recent years, AMC Plus, which is actually disaggregated in your app, and HBO. Talk about that a little bit. Strategically, what could we say about that?
Yeah, I understand their sentiment there. And, with, again, a lot of companies were chasing Netflix because of the multiples they were getting on Wall Street and doing their best to mimic that model as to essentially be a hedge against, the decline of the linear business overall, which makes sense to me. The challenge is that there's a very stable business for all of those companies in their linear arrangements with regard to the fees that distributors like us pay for them to offer it to ourselves, whether people watch that particular content or not, which is a phenomenon that doesn't exist if you have a standalone focused streamer, because if people don't want that content at that time, they're going to drop it, to your point about the bundle. So an aggregated bundle offers real value for some of those platforms. And so as things evolve, if all of the valuable content is moving from linear to these platforms, then it calls into question the value ratio about what should a distributor be paying for this, or if we're going to give value to the consumer in the places where there's good cash flow for everybody and it kind of closes the loop. It's important for those things to be included as part of what the consumer is able to get, because it's just confusing as well. It's like what's on Paramount Network versus Paramount Plus. Some of these things are still being worked out, but ultimately I think there is that synergy between both modes.
Thank you for the time. A good interview. I look forward to maybe doing it again soon.
Would love to.
I'm Dan Frankel, CEO and co-founder of NextTMT, on behalf of our partners at Media Play News, with Addy, CMO of Philo.
Have a good day and a great week.